High Commander Zyrax stood at the panoramic viewport of the Imperial Command Center, his forearms clasped behind his back as he watched the swirling nebulas beyond. The magnificent purple and gold clouds seemed to mock him now, their colors matching the gaudy Imperial banners that hung everywhere in this blasted place. He let out a long, wheezing sigh through his respiratory vents. Who would have thought, he muttered to himself, that the mighty Galactic Meridian Empire would be brought to its knees by a single human female's lacrimal secretions? Behind him, Junior Commander Pax cleared her throat, or whatever passed for a throat in her species. "Sir, the preliminary report from the Peace Summit disaster is ready." Zyrax turned slowly, his chromatophores flickering with irritation. "Disaster? Oh, that's putting it mildly, isn't it? Why don't we call it what it really was the day we signed our own death warrant because some overzealous protocol officer couldn't keep their mandibles shut?" The events of that day played back in his mind with crystal clarity. The Meridian Empire had encountered many species in its 10,000 years of existence, but humans? They were different. When the first contact protocols were initiated, everything seemed normal. The humans sent their diplomats, their scientists, their military observers, all standard procedure. But they also sent families. Who brings their families to a first contact situation? Humans, apparently. Isabella Rodriguez. Zyrax pronounced the name carefully, tasting the foreign syllables. A civilian cultural attaché. A mother of 3. And now the catalyst for the biggest military crisis our empire has faced in 50 generations. He picked up the holo report from his desk, watching the scene replay itself. Isabella Rodriguez, standing proud in her Earth formal wear, extending the hand of friendship, literally, to the Imperial Archconsul. The Archconsul, in all his infinite wisdom, not only refusing the gesture but launching into a tirade about the barbaric nature of human social customs. The carefully constructed diplomatic bridge crumbling as Isabella's eyes welled up with tears, her youngest child watching from the observation gallery. "Tell me," Pax. Zyrax's voice dripped with sarcasm, when the Archconsul was finishing his speech about how humans were barely more evolved than spacefaring primates, did anyone bother to check if the security feeds were still running? Pax shifted uncomfortably. "The feeds were active, sir. The entire incident was broadcast across 3 sectors. Wonderful. Zyrax threw all 4 arms up in exasperation. "So not only did we humiliate a mother in front of her child, but we did it with an audience of trillions. And now her son." He paused, his color patterns shifting to a deep, worried crimson. "Her son commands the humans' first deep space fleet. Tell me, how's that working out for us?" The distant rumble of the station's defense shields activating answered his question before Pax could open her mouth. Red alert klaxons began to wail throughout the command center, and Zyrax felt a familiar sinking sensation in all 3 of his stomachs. The humans were coming, and they were coming for blood. Sir Pax's voice wavered. "Admiral Marcus Rodriguez's fleet just dropped out of hyperspace. They're broadcasting a message on all frequencies." "Let me guess." Zyrax sank into his command chair. "It's about his mother." The recording played for the 100th time on Commander Pax's screen, but she couldn't look away. Isabella Rodriguez stood before the Imperial delegation, wearing what the humans called a dress. A flowing garment in Earth's diplomatic colors of blue and silver. Her hand was extended in the human greeting gesture, her smile radiating warmth and hope. That smile would soon shatter like crystal under a gravitational hammer. Observe, sneered Archconsul Thexnar, his bioluminescent patches pulsing with disdain, how the human female presents her appendage, like a primitive creature offering food, and they expect us to accept this as proper diplomatic protocol. The assembled Imperial dignitaries tittered a sound like thousands of rattling shells. Isabella's hand remained extended, her smile faltering slightly. Behind her, Earth's diplomatic corps tensed visibly. Perhaps, Thexnar continued, rising to his full 4-meter height, "we should explain to our guests why they are unsuitable for inclusion in galactic society." He gestured at Isabella with 3 of his primary appendages. "This specimen, for example. Not only does she display barbaric greeting customs, but she has brought her offspring to a diplomatic summit. As if we were hosting some tribal gathering rather than conducting serious interstellar negotiations." In the observation gallery, Isabella's youngest son pressed his hands against the transparent barrier, his young face contorting with emotion. The Archconsul noticed and laughed a harsh, clicking sound that echoed through the chamber. Look. The offspring shows emotional distress. How typical of their underdeveloped species. Tears? In a diplomatic setting? This merely proves my point about their evolutionary inadequacies. That's when it happened. Isabella Rodriguez, cultural attack and mother of 3, began to cry. Not loud, dramatic sobs, but silent tears that rolled down her cheeks as she lowered her hand and straightened her spine. "My son," she said quietly, her voice carrying clearly through the shocked silence, "is watching because I wanted him to see humanity's first steps into a larger community. I wanted him to witness history." Instead, she wiped her eyes with dignified precision. Instead, he's learning a different lesson entirely. The recording stopped there, but Pax knew what happened next. The human delegation withdrew immediately. No formal declarations, no threats, they simply left. The Empire's diplomatic corps had congratulated themselves on putting the upstart species in their place. 3 days later, Marcus Rodriguez resigned his teaching position at Earth's premier military academy. Within a month, he had reactivated his former military commission. Within 6 months, he had risen to command Earth's most advanced battle fleet. But they're just humans. Pax remembered the dismissive snorts of her superior officers. Their ships are primitive, their weapons unremarkable. What can they possibly do? Now, 1 year later, Pax watched the tactical display as Admiral Marcus Rodriguez's fleet moved into attack formation. The ships were anything but primitive. Somehow, in just 12 months, humans had developed technologies that made Imperial sensors struggle to track them. Their weapons were proving to be very remarkable indeed. A message flashed across her screen, text only, no visual communication. It was addressed personally to Archconsul Thexnar. "You made my mother cry. You mocked her in front of her child. You dismissed her dignity, her humanity, and her role as a mother. The lesson I learned that day wasn't about humanity's first steps into a larger community. It was about how the community we hoped to join was unworthy of her tears. Today we begin teaching a new lesson. Pay attention. There will be a test." Pax's chromatophores flickered with fear as she transferred the message to her superiors. She had a feeling the Empire was about to learn that making a human mother cry was possibly the worst mistake in its 10,000-year history. And somewhere in the command center, she could have sworn she heard Archconsul Thexnar whimper. Commander Lyra Tivek considered herself a rational being. She prided herself on keeping her emotions in check, unlike those humans. So when the first reports came in, she maintained her composure. When the second wave of reports arrived, she remained calm. By the third wave, her tentacles were twitching uncontrollably. "What do you mean they just disappeared?" She glared at her tactical officer, who seemed to be trying to shrink into his exoskeleton. "Exactly that, Commander. The human ships approached our outposts in the Carina sector, and then they vanished. All 43 of them, just gone." "Ships don't just vanish." Lyra slammed a tentacle on her command console. "They're using some kind of cloaking technology. Our sensors detect no known cloaking signatures, Commander. They're just not there anymore." The tactical display suddenly erupted with alerts. Human ships were appearing simultaneously at 6 different Imperial outposts. Not approaching, appearing. As if they had been there all along, hiding in plain sight. "By the first Emperor's blessed tentacles," Lyra whispered. "They've developed quantum displacement technology. They're not cloaking their ships, they're shifting them slightly out of phase with normal spacetime." Before she could issue any orders, the reports started flooding in. Imperial outpost after Imperial outpost reported the same thing: precision strikes that somehow bypassed their supposedly impenetrable shields. The humans weren't trying to destroy the outposts, they were surgically disabling specific systems, weapons, communications, engines, shield generators. "Commander," her tactical officer's voice cracked with panic. "They're broadcasting something on all frequencies." A human voice filled the command center. Not angry, not threatening. Calm, professional, almost friendly. "This is Admiral Marcus Rodriguez of the Earth Defense Fleet. You may notice your outposts are experiencing some technical difficulties. Don't worry, we made sure life support systems remained untouched. We're not monsters, after all. Unlike some species who think it's acceptable to make mothers cry in front of their children." Lyra's tactical officer brought up a replay of one of the attacks. The human ships had appeared literally inside the Imperial shields. That should have been impossible. The energy requirements alone. Oh. Admiral Rodriguez's voice continued. You're probably wondering about our little disappearing act. Fun trick, isn't it? Turns out when you tell humans they're primitive and unsuitable for galactic society, they get really motivated to prove you wrong. My mother always said I was a quick learner. Another alert flashed on Lyra's screen. The humans were using some kind of targeted electromagnetic pulse, but unlike anything in Imperial records, it disabled Imperial technology while leaving their own systems completely unaffected. You know what else my mother taught me? Rodriguez's voice carried a hint of amusement now. She said, Marcus, if you're going to teach someone a lesson, make sure they're paying attention. So more, are you paying attention yet? Lyra watched in horror as status reports streamed in. 7 supply lines cut, 12 communication relays disabled, 3 major fleet bases effectively neutered, all without a single casualty on either side. This is just the first lesson, Rodriguez continued. A little demonstration to show you what those primitive humans you mocked can do. The real lessons begin tomorrow. I suggest you study hard. There will be regular pop quizzes. The transmission cut off. Lyra's command staff stared at their screens in silence. Finally, her tactical officer spoke up. Commander, should we inform High Command that we may have slightly underestimated the humans' capabilities? Lyra let out a sound that might have been a laugh, if it wasn't so close to a sob. Tell them that insulting one human mother's dignity has just cost us our reputation as the most technologically advanced civilization in the galaxy. Because somehow, in just 12 months, these primitives have developed technology that makes our best defense systems look like children's toys. She paused, watching another Imperial outpost go dark on her tactical display. And someone please tell the Archconsul that his assessment of human emotional responses being a weakness might need some revision. Because right now, a son's love for his mother is systematically dismantling our entire empire. The Imperial Emergency Council chamber buzzed with panic. Literally buzzed. Half the assembled officials were from insectoid species, and their agitation filled the air with a symphony of clicking mandibles and vibrating wing cases. Send them gifts, shouted one counselor, his antennae twitching frantically. The humans appreciate material possessions, yes? Send the Rodriguez matriarch a moon, several moons. Archconsul Thex Nar, looking considerably less impressive than he had during the infamous summit, slumped in his chair. We tried that last week. They sent back all 15 moons, gift-wrapped, with a note saying, and I quote, my mother taught me never to accept bribes from people who made me cry. General Kira Nova, recently promoted after her predecessors suffered an unfortunate nervous breakdown, stepped forward. Unlike her fellow officers, she maintained a calm demeanor, though the slight purple tinge to her usually blue skin betrayed her stress. The humans are utilizing psychological warfare techniques that our military has never encountered, she announced, pulling up a holographic display. For example, every time we attempt to engage their ships, they broadcast recordings from the peace summit. Our crews are forced to listen to the Archconsul's speech while being systematically disabled. That's barbaric, gasped a counselor. Oh, it gets better. Kira's voice dripped with sarcasm. They've started sending our fleet commanders birthday cards for their mothers, handwritten, with little notes saying, since you care so much about proper family protocols, do you know how many nervous breakdowns that's caused? The display showed statistics that made several counselors change color involuntarily. Morale across the Imperial fleet had plummeted. 3 sector commanders had resigned, citing emotional distress due to overwhelming guilt. One battle group had actually surrendered after receiving a video message of Isabella Rodriguez baking cookies for her son's fleet crew. But surely our technological superiority, began one official. Is a joke, Kira cut him off. Yesterday they shut down our main defense grid by broadcasting its control frequency encoded in a human lullaby. A lullaby that, according to the attached note, Isabella Rodriguez used to sing to Admiral Marcus when he was a child. The room fell silent, except for the continuing nervous buzz of wings. And now, Kira continued, pulling up another report, they've started something new. They're offering our crews maternal counseling services. They've set up a helpline for Imperial soldiers to talk about their relationships with their mothers. Do you know how many have called? How many? Thex Nar asked weakly. 30% of our remaining active forces. The humans are providing free therapy to our troops while simultaneously dismantling our empire. And the worst part, our soldiers are rating the service 5 stars and recommending it to their squadron mates. A message notification flashed across the council chamber's main screen. Kira opened it, then immediately wished she hadn't. Oh, wonderful. Admiral Rodriguez just sent us all invitations to his mother's upcoming birthday celebration. He says, and again I quote, since you're so interested in proper protocol regarding mothers. I'm sure you wouldn't want to commit the social faux pas of missing this important family event. We're not actually expected to attend, squeaked a counselor. The invitation includes a note saying that failure to attend will be considered a further insult to his mother's dignity. It's also mentioned that his fleet has coincidentally scheduled tactical exercises in this sector on the same day. Thick Snar buried his face in his appendages. Do we have any options left? Well, Kira consulted her notes. We could try my new strategy, which is and apologize sincerely and hope that Isabella Rodriguez is as forgiving as her son claims she raised him to be. The room erupted in protests about Imperial dignity and protocol, but Kira noticed that Thexnar was quietly nodding. After all, dignity wouldn't matter much if they didn't have an empire left to be dignified about. Another message flashed across the screen. Time for today's pop quiz. Topic: the importance of sincere apologies in maintaining galactic peace. This will count toward your final grade. The buzzing in the council chamber reached a new pitch of desperation. Battle Commander Rax Vor's report came in first. They're everywhere. The humans. They've somehow turned our own defense platforms against us. Our supposedly hack-proof quantum encrypted systems are playing human soap operas. The crews are. They're crying, sir. The episodes are about mother-child relationships. Station Commander Yix was next. They surrounded our primary shipyards with something they call portable wormholes. Every time we launch a ship, it comes out near their guns. And each blast is synchronized to a recording of that woman's tears from the summit. The reports flooded the Imperial Command Center's communications array like a tidal wave of panic. High Commander Zyrax watched his mighty empire crumble in real time, one stronghold after another. Sir Pax's voice cracked with disbelief. The humans have deployed some kind of. They're calling it a time dilation web. They've trapped our entire third fleet in a temporal bubble where they're forced to watch the Peace Summit incident on an endless loop. Zyrax slumped in his command chair. How many ships have we lost? That's the thing. Sir Pax checked her readings again. None. The humans aren't destroying anything. They're just neutralizing everything. Their weapons are designed to disable, not destroy. Admiral Rodriguez sent a message about it. He says, and I quote, "My mother taught me that violence should always be the last resort." The main screen lit up with a priority transmission. Admiral Marcus Rodriguez's face appeared, looking calm and composed. He sat at what appeared to be a kitchen table. "Good morning, Imperial Command," he said pleasantly, stirring something in a cup. "I'm having coffee with my mother. She makes the best coffee in the galaxy, you know. Would you like to know what she just told me?" Zyrax felt his chromatophores pale to an almost translucent state. She said, "Marcus, honey, don't you think they've learned their lesson? And you know what? Mothers have this annoying habit of being right about these things." Behind him, Isabella Rodriguez moved into view, placing a gentle hand on her son's shoulder. She looked directly at the camera, her eyes showing not triumph, but compassion. "So here's what's going to happen," Marcus continued, taking a sip from his cup. "In the past 24 hours, we've deployed our latest innovations. The quantum phase shifters that let us walk right through your shields. That was last month's technology. The time dilation fields? Last week's. Want to know what we developed yesterday?" As if on cue, every Imperial ship's computer system simultaneously displayed the same message: control override complete. Have a nice day. "We call it the Universal Override Protocol," Marcus smiled. "Turns out your entire command and control architecture has a fundamental flaw that your engineers never considered. Something so basic that it took, what was it, Mom? 3 hours to crack." 2.5, honey, Isabella corrected gently. "And remember what I said about gloating." "Right, sorry, Mom," Marcus turned back to the camera. "The point is, we now have complete control of every Imperial military asset in the galaxy. Every ship, every station, every defense platform. We could end your empire with a single command." He paused to take another sip of coffee. But my mother raised me better than that, so instead I'm going to give you a choice. Behind me, you'll see my mother baking her famous sugar cookies. In exactly 1 hour, she'll be hosting a peace summit, a real one this time, with cookies and coffee and actual diplomacy. Isabella smiled warmly. The cookies are my grandmother's recipe. I suggest you attend, Marcus added, because while my mother might have raised me to be merciful, she also taught me to be thorough. You have 1 hour to decide cookies and coffee with my mother or finding out what else we developed while you weren't paying attention. The transmission ended, leaving the Imperial Command Center in stunned silence. Finally, Pax spoke up. Sir, should I inform the Archconsul that we'll be attending a coffee and cookie summit? Xirax stood up, straightening his ceremonial robes. Pax, I believe we've learned an important lesson about the humans. Their technological advancement isn't what makes them dangerous. It's their ability to turn a mother's tears into a force that can reshape the galaxy. The Imperial delegation found themselves seated at an actual wooden table, the scent of freshly baked cookies filling the air. Archconsul Thexnar, whose mighty presence once commanded fear across 17 sectors, now sat meekly before a steaming cup of what humans called coffee. Isabella Rodriguez moved around the table, offering cookies from a floral-patterned plate. Please, try them. My grandmother always said nothing smooths over difficulties quite like homemade cookies. High Commander Xirax cautiously picked up a cookie with one of his less ceremonial appendages. The sweet aroma made his olfactory sensors tingle. Behind him, Pax was already on her third, her chromatophores glowing with unexpected pleasure. Now then, Admiral Marcus Rodriguez said, taking his seat beside his mother. Let's discuss the terms of peace. Mom, would you like to start? Isabella placed the cookie plate down and straightened her apron. First, I want to make something clear. This isn't about revenge. This was never about revenge. This was about education. She looked directly at Thexnar, who seemed to be finding his coffee cup fascinating. You see, when you dismissed humans as primitive, when you mocked our customs and our family bonds, you didn't just insult me. You revealed a dangerous flaw in your empire's understanding of other species. A flaw, Marcus added, that we've spent the last year helping you understand. Through practical demonstrations, Pax raised a tentacle. The quantum phase shifting technology, developed by a team of scientists who watched their colleague cry that day, Marcus nodded. The time dilation fields, created by engineers who decided to show you exactly what humans can do when properly motivated. The Universal Override Protocol, that was personally created by a group of programmers who happened to be mothers themselves. Isabella touched her son's arm gently. The terms are simple. The Empire will establish a new diplomatic corps, one that recognizes that diversity, even in customs and emotional expressions, is strength, not weakness. Additionally, Marcus continued, the Empire will create a cultural understanding division, led by, if she's willing to accept the position. He looked at his mother. Isabella smiled. I would be honored to help the Empire learn the importance of respecting all species' customs and traditions, starting with proper training in various greeting protocols. Thexnar finally looked up from his coffee. And our military assets will be returned to your control, Marcus said, after the completion of the new diplomatic training programs, which, by the way, will include mandatory courses in family dynamics across species. My mother will be designing the curriculum. And the technology you used against us, Xirax asked. Marcus grinned. Consider it a dowry of sorts. We'll share our advances, teach your engineers the principles behind them, under one condition, which is... Isabella answered, her voice gentle but firm. That you understand they were never meant to be weapons. Every breakthrough, every innovation we created can be used to bring species together, to protect and preserve life, just as a mother's tears aren't a sign of weakness, but a reminder of the depth of feeling that drives us to better ourselves and our society. She offered the cookie plate again. More cookies. They're best while they're warm. The Imperial delegation, leaders of the mightiest civilization in known space, found themselves accepting second helpings from a human mother they had once dismissed as primitive. The same mother whose tears had inspired a revolution in human technology and a revolution in Imperial thinking. As the meeting concluded, Thexnar approached Isabella. his mighty frame bent in what humans would recognize as a bow. "Madam Rodriguez, I wish to personally express. That is, what I mean to say." Isabella patted his arm. "I know, and I forgive you. That's another thing mothers are good at." Behind them, Marcus watched with satisfaction as the mighty empire learned its final lesson: never underestimate a species that values family enough to change the galaxy when you make their mother cry.